The click of the front door lock echoed through the quiet house as Ethan stepped inside. It was earlier than usual. His meeting had been cancelled, granting him an unexpected free evening. He loosened his tie, set his briefcase by the door, and paused. Something felt off. A faint, unfamiliar cologne lingered in the air, intertwining with the familiar scent of Lila's lavender candles. The living room looked pristine, almost too pristine, as if it had been hurriedly cleaned. A sinking feeling settled in his chest as he scanned the space, his instincts on high alert. "Lila," he called out, his voice steady despite the unease tightening in his throat. "In here," came her cheerful response from the bedroom. Ethan followed the sound, each step heavier than the last. As he entered the room, he found Lila ironing a deep red cocktail dress, one he hadn't seen her wear in years. She looked stunning, her dark wavy hair cascading over one shoulder, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Special occasion?" he asked casually, leaning against the doorway. Her hand faltered slightly with the iron before she recovered, her expression a little too rehearsed. "Oh, just catching up with an old friend tonight," she said brightly, avoiding his gaze. Ethan's stomach tightened. "An old friend? Anyone I know?" She hesitated, then forced a light laugh. "Derek. You remember me mentioning him from high school." Derek. The name left a bitter taste in Ethan's mouth. He nodded slowly. "The high school sweetheart." "It's not like that," she said quickly, too quickly. "We ran into each other by chance. He's in town for work, just dinner to reminisce, nothing more." Ethan's instinct screamed at him, but he forced a neutral expression. "Why not make it a group thing? I'd love to meet him." Lila's smile faltered for just a moment before she masked it. "It's really just a quick catch-up, nothing formal. Besides, you'd probably find it boring. Just old memories, you know." A cold wave of anger washed over Ethan, but he swallowed it down. "Sure. Have fun." He turned away before she could see the storm brewing beneath his calm facade. After she left, Ethan paced the living room, the click of her heels and the soft closing of the door replaying in his mind like a warning bell. He glanced out the window and saw her get into their silver sedan, dressed to perfection, as if heading to a gala rather than a casual dinner. "You're being paranoid," he told himself. Twice. But the gnawing suspicion wouldn't fade. Something about the way she avoided his eyes, how she downplayed the evening, it all felt wrong. He grabbed his phone from the coffee table, staring at the screen in contemplation. Calling her would accomplish nothing. Instead, he opened the GPS tracking app linked to her car, a security feature they had agreed upon after a theft incident years ago. He told himself it wasn't spying, it was precautionary. The blinking on the map showed her heading downtown. Dinner with Derek, Ethan thought bitterly, exhaling sharply as he leaned back into the couch. Memories of their relationship flooded his mind. Meeting Lila in college, falling in love with her ambition and charisma, the way she had once made him feel like the luckiest man in the world. But lately, cracks had begun to show, disinterest, excuses, distance. And now this. The next morning, Ethan made a deliberate effort to act normal. Over breakfast, Lila was as cheerful as ever, recounting an anecdote from her evening. "It was nice catching up," she said with an easy smile. "Derek's doing really well, married now too." "Oh, married." Ethan replied smoothly, masking the sarcasm beneath a sip of coffee. "That's good to hear." Her eyes flicked to his, gauging his reaction, but Ethan gave her nothing. Over the following days, Ethan became methodical. He noted her schedule, the evenings she claimed to be working late, the inconsistencies in her stories. Suspicion piled up like evidence in a courtroom. Then came the Wednesday 2 weeks later. Lila called, saying she'd be staying late for a project. Ethan feigned understanding, wishing her luck. But the moment the call ended, he grabbed his keys and drove to her office. From across the street, he watched as she stepped out of the building, her smile radiant, her laughter effortless as she linked arms with a man Ethan instantly recognized from old photos. Derek. Ethan's jaw tightened. His hand instinctively reached for his phone, snapping pictures as they walked together. They sat at a nearby cafe, their body language intimate, every stolen glance and touch another nail in the coffin. Then came the final confirmation. They left the cafe, walking hand in hand to a nearby motel. Ethan followed at a safe distance, his pulse pounding. As he watched Lila kiss Derek before disappearing inside, something inside him snapped. In the days that followed, Ethan operated in silence. He hired a private investigator, gathered financial records, consulted a lawyer. This wasn't just about ending their marriage, it was about dismantling everything Lila had taken for granted. On the surface, he played the doting husband. He kissed her goodbye in the mornings, called her at lunch, even brought her flowers one evening. Lila, seemingly guilt-free, continued her charade. Then, 2 weeks later, when she made her usual working late call, Ethan put his plan into motion. That night, as soon as she left, he packed his belongings, leaving behind every photo and memento of their life together. When Lila returned at 7:30, the apartment was eerily silent. "Ethan," she called, setting her bag on the counter. "In here." His voice was calm, detached. She found him sitting at the kitchen table, divorce papers neatly stacked before him. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's time we talk." He slid the photos across the table. Lila froze, her face draining of color as she stared at the evidence. "Care to explain?" His voice was cold, devoid of the warmth it once held. "Ethan, please, it's not what it looks like." "Don't insult me, Lila." His patience snapped. "I've watched you lie for months. This is the final straw." Tears streamed down her face as she begged for forgiveness, pleaded for another chance. But Ethan remained unmoved. "Cheating isn't a mistake, Lila. It's a choice. And now you'll face the consequences." As she sobbed, Ethan stood, grabbing his bags. "The papers are signed. You'll hear from my lawyer." With that, he walked out, leaving her alone to face the wreckage of her betrayal. The days that followed were marked by silence. Ethan ignored Lila's desperate calls and texts, forwarding them all to his lawyer. But he wasn't content with merely walking away. He wanted her to feel the full weight of her actions, emotionally, professionally, and publicly. He compiled every shred of evidence, the photos, GPS logs, the investigator's report, and anonymously mailed them to Lila's employer. Within days, she was placed on unpaid leave pending an investigation. Then there was Derek. Ethan wasn't about to let his wife remain in the dark. A well-placed call to the investigator led him straight to her. By the time Ethan was done, Lila had lost far more than just a husband. She had lost everything she had so carelessly risked. And Ethan? He walked away with his dignity, and the satisfaction of knowing she'd never forget the price of betrayal. Ethan sent her an envelope containing the same damning evidence along with a simple note: "Your husband has been meeting my wife at the Super 8 motel every other Thursday. You deserve to know the truth." He didn't expect a response, but a week later, he received a tearful voicemail from Derek's wife, thanking him for his courage. She was divorcing Derek, a revelation that filled Ethan with grim satisfaction. Before leaving his marriage behind, Ethan had discreetly moved half of their shared savings into a private account, an action his lawyer later confirmed was entirely legal under their circumstances. Lila, blinded by her affair, hadn't even noticed. By the time she did, the divorce proceedings were already well underway. Armed with indisputable evidence of her infidelity, Ethan held the upper hand in every negotiation. Lila fought back at first, but when Derek's wife subpoenaed him in her own divorce case, Lila found herself increasingly isolated. Derek, it seemed, had no intention of standing by her either. By the time the dust settled, Ethan walked away unburdened, no alimony payments, a fair share of their assets, and most importantly, his dignity intact. Lila, however, was left to navigate the wreckage of her own making. Months passed, and Ethan dedicated himself to rebuilding his life. He channeled his energy into his career, tackling ambitious projects that earned him recognition and promotions. His colleagues took notice of his newfound confidence, and with it came unexpected attention. One evening, at a networking event, he met Maya, a marketing consultant with an infectious laugh and a sharp wit. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, and what began as professional camaraderie soon blossomed into something deeper. For the first time in months, Ethan felt genuinely happy. Maya was different, honest, warm, and unwaveringly supportive. She encouraged him to let go of his lingering anger toward Lila and focus on the bright future ahead. Almost a year after the divorce, Ethan received an unexpected message from Lila. It was brief yet poignant. "Can we meet? I owe you an apology." After a moment's hesitation, he agreed. They met at a quiet cafe, where Lila appeared visibly changed, her confidence diminished, replaced by a hesitant vulnerability. "I'm sorry for everything," she began, her voice trembling. "You didn't deserve what I did to you." Ethan listened in silence as she admitted to being caught up in the illusion of her past with Derek, only to be abandoned by him when reality set in. She had lost her job, her reputation, and the comfortable life they once shared. "I regret it every day," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "I know I can't fix what I've done, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry." Ethan regarded her with a calm expression, his emotions no longer tangled in the past. "I appreciate that, Lila," he said evenly. "But we can't go back. What's done is done. I've moved on, and I hope you can too." Her gaze fell to the table. "Are you happy?" she asked softly. "Yes," Ethan replied without hesitation. "I found someone who treats me with the respect I deserve." Lila nodded, forcing a small bittersweet smile. "I'm glad," she murmured. "You deserve that." As Ethan walked away from the cafe, a sense of closure settled over him. Lila's apology didn't erase the past, but it validated the choices he had made. It reminded him of how far he had come. His relationship with Maya flourished. They traveled, laughed, and built a future grounded in trust and love. When he proposed to her on a quiet beach at sunset, she said yes, tears of joy shining in her eyes. Looking into her gaze, Ethan realized that the storm of his past had led him to a brighter horizon. Sometimes, the best revenge wasn't destruction, it was living well, and Ethan was finally living the life he deserved. Yet, even in his newfound happiness, echoes of the past occasionally resurfaced. Some nights, he lay awake, haunted by memories of betrayal and the raw anger that had consumed him. Though he had moved on, the scars Lila left behind remained as quiet reminders of how fragile trust could be. Maya, ever perceptive, noticed those moments when he seemed distant. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, she gently touched his arm. "You seem far away tonight," she said softly. "Do you want to talk about it?" Ethan hesitated. Would dredging up the past help or hurt their relationship? But Maya's steady gaze reassured him. "It's just, sometimes I think about everything that happened with Lila," he admitted. "Not because I miss her, but because I never want to feel that way again." Maya nodded with understanding. "Betrayal like that leaves a mark. But, Ethan, you're not the same person you were then. And I'm not her. I'm here for you, always." Her words, spoken with such sincerity, eased the weight on his chest. He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I know, Maya. And I'm grateful for you every single day." Meanwhile, Lila's life continued to unravel. After losing her job, she struggled to find stable employment. Her reputation, once built on charm and ambition, had been irreparably tarnished. Derek had vanished without a trace, leaving her to pick up the shattered remnants of her choices. Friends who had once admired her marriage with Ethan now kept their distance, unwilling to be associated with someone who had caused so much damage. For the first time in her life, Lila understood the true cost of her betrayal, not just the loss of her marriage, but the erosion of trust and respect from everyone around her. Ethan, however, thrived. As he and Maya planned their wedding, they organized a small engagement celebration with their closest friends and family. The night was filled with laughter and warmth. Maya's family embraced Ethan wholeheartedly, and his own family adored Maya. As the evening wound down, Ethan stepped outside for a moment of solitude, reflecting on how far he had come. Under the soft glow of string lights, his mother approached him with a proud smile. "You've been through so much, Ethan," she said gently. "But look at you now. You've turned that pain into something beautiful." Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat, nodding. "I couldn't have done it without Maya. She's everything I never knew I needed." His mother's smile deepened. "And you're everything she deserves. Don't let the past steal even a moment of your future. You've earned this happiness." Months later, an unexpected letter arrived in the mail. It was from Lila. Ethan hesitated before opening it, wondering if her words would reopen old wounds. But curiosity won, and he unfolded the letter with cautious hands. "Ethan, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for showing me the kind of man I should have appreciated when I had the chance. I know my words can't undo the hurt I caused, but I want you to know that I've learned from my mistakes. Losing you was the hardest lesson of my life. I hope you found happiness, You deserve it. Ethan folded the letter and set it aside. It didn't stir anger or pain. Instead, it brought finality. Lila was no longer a part of his life, and she never would be again. Turning to Maya, who sat curled up with a book on the couch, he smiled. She looked up, her eyes sparkling with warmth. Ethan walked over, took her hand, and squeezed it. I love you, he said, his voice steady and sincere. Maya tilted her head, a curious smile playing on her lips. Where'd that come from? Just felt like saying it, he replied. And for the first time in years.